there, my name is Katie Morgan. I am an indie fantasy author, editor, and longtime anime fan, and welcome to Let's Write With, the series where we use the power of anime to become better writers. Today we're going to do something a little different. If you've seen other episodes in this series, you know that we usually dig into multiple writing elements in one anime, but today we're going to be looking at one writing element across many different anime. And if you think this sounds suspiciously like the setup for a ranking video, you are correct. We're going to be looking at 5 of the best big brothers in anime and ranking them from really awesome to best in show, based on some fairly arbitrary features that I'll be discussing in each section. Why big brothers? Well, it just so happens that I have one, which means I have some thoughts on how to write one. It also means that I, as a younger sibling, will be completely objective on this topic. All kidding aside, in writing discussions, I often find that family dynamics are overlooked in favor of talking about things like romance or hero and villain interactions. But sibling relationships are also an important aspect of character writing, and they deserve the spotlight just as much as that other stuff. That said, as I mentioned, this is just an excuse to do a silly video with a little bit of writing advice on the side, so let's not overanalyze it and just get going. At number 5, Toya Kinomoto from Cardcaptor Sakura. For those of you who have been living under a rock, Cardcaptor Sakura is a magical girl shoujo anime from the late 1990s to early 2000s. The story follows Sakura Kinomoto, a 4th grader who accidentally releases the seal on a set of magical cards called Clow Cards, and then spends the rest of the series trying to recover them while also discovering her own magical powers. I hate to take the focus away from Sakura, who is a great character in her own right, but this is a video about big brothers, so let's talk about hers. Toya is kind of a jerk, but not really. Toya Kinomoto is, at first glance, a bit of a snot who enjoys riling his sister up by calling her a monster. If he's helpful, it usually comes at a chore-related cost, and often with a bit of complaining. However, Toya's tendency to give his sister a hard time is clearly just a front to hide the fact that he is, in fact, a total sweetheart. He's in tune with Sakura's moods enough to know when she's truly upset about something, and he usually tries to show his support in some way, even if he writes it off as something unimportant or self-serving rather than the kindness it is. This is actually related to a big aspect of Toya's character as far as being an excellent big brother. Toya uses his magic to help on the sly. Sakura may be the one with the magical contract and the ability to capture Clow Cards, but Toya has his own magic and he frequently uses it to help. Toya's magic revolves in part around his ability to see ghosts. This includes the ghost of his and Sakura's mom, who died when she was very young. It must be said that he does arguably use this power for evil, although not necessarily intentionally, given that talking about what he can see led to Sakura's deep-seated fear of ghosts. But it's mostly just one part of his sensitivity to magic, which leads to lots of hilarity with him almost, but not quite, catching Sakura's magical companion Kero in the act of very much not being a normal plushie. It also means he's able to indirectly help with Clow Cards when the situation gets dangerous. For example, he doesn't bat an eye at dealing with their magic when it puts others, including Sakura, in danger. And he's prepared to get even more deeply involved if he needs to, such as in the case of the Mirror card, which pretends to be Sakura in order to get her in trouble. Toya almost immediately knows that it isn't Sakura, but he goes along with it, hoping to appease what he thinks is a ghost and prevent it from causing further problems. Even when Mirror basically makes him fall off a cliff, he still wants to help. This relationship with the Mirror card actually gets revisited several times throughout the series. Toya is never really fooled when Sakura uses Mirror as a stand-in, but he's also prepared to go with it rather than forcing Sakura to confide in him about what's going on when she's obviously not ready to. Toya clearly knows something's up with his sister, and he does what he can to help and protect her, but he also tries to stay out of it as much as possible, because he recognizes that there are some things she needs to do herself. And this desire to help and protect is actually part of a really significant and interesting character flaw. Toya has a bit of a complex. As Toya's boyfriend, I mean best friend, Yukito points out in episode 6, Toya has a bit of a sister complex. This is evidenced by Toya's sometimes overprotective actions and his comments that even though he gives her a hard time, no one else is allowed to. Of course, a sister complex is definitely not a requirement for a good big brother. Quite the opposite, actually. And I think in this case it's meant to be a joke, although Yukito does mention it several times. That said, it's not like Clamp, the mangaka of this series, has never promoted unhealthy behavior as normal and even admirable. So why bring this up in a video about good big brothers? Well, as we'll see with other entries on this list, good doesn't necessarily mean flawless. Obviously, big brothers should do the important stuff, like put their younger siblings' needs before everything else. But I can't keep from putting on my writerly hat and pointing out that Toya's occasionally more aggressive desire to protect Sakura, even when she doesn't need protecting, provides a nice bit of narrative balance for all the times he keeps himself in check and doesn't try to prevent her from being the hero she is. Ranking reasons. I put Toya at number 5 because I think he's a really good example of an older brother character who tries to support his younger sister while still making an effort to respect her boundaries. His old-fashioned overprotectiveness and his tendency to tease Sakura are not ideal big brother characteristics, but you could definitely argue that they make him a more well-rounded character. Writing takeaways, part 1. 1. A good older brother doesn't necessarily mean someone who's always sweet and kind. Siblings in the real world often fight or get on each other's nerves, so it's reasonable to think that making fictional siblings irritate each other could provide your readers with a sense of realism and familiarity. 2. What an older brother knows, or doesn't know, about his siblings can create good tension and opportunities for character development. What interesting stakes might there be when it comes to who knows what and how they act on that knowledge? 3. In real life, big brothers should, of course, be selflessly devoted to their younger siblings above all else. In fiction, however, flaws are a great way to show character progression and build realistic relationships. At number 4, Yu Narukami from Persona 4, the animation. Persona 4 is about a bunch of teenagers who jump into TVs and solve crimes. No, really. P4 is an anime adaptation of the 4th game in the Persona video game series. The story focuses on a teenage boy named Yu Narukami who arrives in a small town to spend the year with his uncle and cousin. After unlocking some unexpected magical powers, he and his new friends set out to uncover the truth behind a series of murders linked to a magical TV world. Now I know what you're thinking. Why is Yu on this list when he's not actually a big brother? Well, joke's on you, because it turns out being a big brother is about more than just genetics. Allow me to explain. Yu exudes big bro vibes. Strictly speaking, Yu and his little cousin Nanako are not actually a big brother-younger sister combo, but they basically play those roles throughout the series, with Dojima as the overworked but well-meaning dad. Because Yu himself is arguably an abandoned child, his parents basically dump him and Inaba while they're out of the country, and we never see Yu interact with them at all. He's hyper-aware of Nanako's situation as a quiet, self-reliant little girl whose main companion is TV ads for the local grocery store. This leads to Yu and Nanako forming a close bond to the point where Nanako actually starts referring to Yu as her big brother. Because of their similar situations, Yu picks up on Nanako's feelings regarding her dad being gone all the time and does his best to make her feel valued and included. Which leads to my next point. Yu gets involved even when it's tough. If you're a younger sibling, you probably remember times when you tried to tag along with whatever your older sibling was doing and were told to get lost. Please accept my commiseration on that. Yu, however, is one of those rare big brothers who's actually completely fine with getting his little sister involved with his friends. When Dojima is unable to keep his promise about spending time together as a family during the holiday, Yu takes Nanako to hang out with the investigation team, who are delighted to spend the day with her. In fact, Nanako basically becomes an unofficial little sister to the entire group. And as if that weren't enough, Yu spends his summer vacation working so he can earn enough money to surreptitiously replace Nanako's broken umbrella, basically cementing his place in the annals of the most dedicated big brothers, especially given all the nonsense he has to deal with in order to make it happen. And most importantly of all, Yu is willing to risk any goodwill he might have gained with his surrogate family in order to address the elephant in the room. Yu's uncle Dojima is a cop, and he's extremely focused on 2 big cases: the serial murder case that Yu and his friends are dealing with, unbeknownst to him, and the unresolved hit and run that killed his wife. He frequently drops everything in order to go deal with work, which has led Nanako to become extremely self-sufficient and lonely. Yu spends much of the early part of the series trying not to rock the boat. However, the tension comes to a head when Yu finally confronts Dojima about focusing on work rather than what Nanako needs. Nanako overhears the conversation and runs away, leading Dojima and Yu to desperately search for her all over town. The situation more or less gets resolved at the end of episode 18, with Yu providing support, but being smart enough to let Dojima and Nanako do the real work of repairing their relationship. Being an awesome big brother, you see, is about more than just the sibling relationship. It's also about supporting the family as a whole, even when it leads to some uncomfortable confrontations. But what happens when those confrontations become a little more dangerous? Yu fights to make good decisions. It's one thing to try to diffuse family drama. It's another when the supernatural intervenes. When Nanako becomes the next kidnapping victim in the TV-related murder spree, we see Yu's cool exterior crumble. The deadpan, goofy guy who usually stays calm for others absolutely freaks out and has to be talked down by his friends until they can do what they need to save her. And when it appears that an injured Nanako has taken a turn for the worst, Yu is forced to make an incredibly difficult decision about whether and how to punish the man he and his friends think is responsible. This whole scene has an interesting underlying current of big brother turmoil. On the one hand, Yu's actions here are all about his relationship with Nanako and wanting to hurt the person who hurt her. But he also struggles with the need to do what he believes she'd want him to do in terms of finding out the truth behind what's actually happening in the TV world. This includes overcoming peer pressure from people he cares about who are also horrified by the situation. Obviously, inflicting a big brother with sibling-related trauma is no fun. But you might say that the true measure of a big brother is the choices he makes when his sibling's life is on the line. Look, I get that the main thing people take away from this anime is Yu's reputation as a Chad based on the King's Game episode. But I personally think the more compelling and interesting part of his character is the way he absolutely knocks it out of the park with regard to being a supportive and dedicated big brother to someone who so desperately needs one. Ranking reasons. I gave Yu the number 4 spot on this list because I thought he deserved a shout out as someone who rocks the big brother role even though genetics doesn't require him to. He also does a good job of balancing day-to-day brotherly awesomeness with literally fighting the bad guys on behalf of his sister. Could he have spoken up sooner about Dojima's neglect of Nanako? Sure. But it's completely understandable why he didn't, and everything worked out okay in the end. And anyway, Yu was a little busy leading a team of magical teenagers into battle, so I'll cut him some slack. Writing takeaways, part 2. 1. Sibling relationships aren't limited to genetics. The found family trope is wildly popular for a reason. A lot of us can relate to relationships founded on mutual love and choice rather than just blood. It's worth exploring who your characters choose to let into their world rather than just the family they're born into. 2. What an older brother does to help or hinder his younger sibling in day-to-day life can say a lot about how much he values the relationship, or doesn't value it. Either way, this can be really useful information from a writing perspective. 3. What actions does your big brother take when his siblings are in serious danger? Putting your characters in stressful situations can reveal interesting things about who they are when there's no time for pretense. Doubly so when it's someone they care about who's in danger rather than them being in danger themselves. At number 3, Killua Zoldyck from Hunter x Hunter. I've already done a video on Hunter x Hunter, so I'll leave a card somewhere on the screen so you can check that out if you want a more detailed discussion of the writing in that show. But as a quick reintroduction to the series, Hunter x Hunter is a shonen action anime about Gon, a 12-year-old boy who decides to become a hunter, a sort of explorer, fighter, magic user, in the hopes of finding his estranged father, a hunter who abandoned him many years ago. One of the most important people Gon meets over the course of his journey is his best friend, Killua Zoldyck. Killua is a clever, snarky kid who spends most of his time being a ride-or-die BFF for Gon. But he's also a fierce older brother who is prepared to take on his entire extremely dangerous assassin family in order to help his little sister gain her freedom. And that is just the sort of dedication to being a big brother that we like to see on this list. Killua treats his little sister like a human being. Killua's younger sister Alluka is a bit of an anomaly even within the Zoldyck family. She has an extremely dangerous power involving the ability to grant wishes, with potentially catastrophic consequences. Unlike the rest of the Zoldyck family, however, Killua treats Alluka like a human being rather than a weapon that needs to be kept locked up. While other household members misgender Alluka and refer to her as an object, Killua repeatedly refers to her as his sister, treats her with kindness, and does what he can to ensure her safety and happiness. One of Killua's major goals during this arc is to get Alika out of the family estate and over to Gon, who is currently in a coma, in the hopes that she can use her power to heal him. However, Killua is also clearly concerned about Alika's own needs and refuses to force her to do anything. Rather than seeing Alika as just a means to an end, Killua wants to help her find a better situation too, and he puts his life on the line for that almost immediately. Killua stands up to the fam. Alika's power has the Zoldyck family so freaked out they keep her locked in the basement for fear of anyone setting off her abilities. This is a pretty big deal for a family of ridiculously skilled assassins. Killua's dad in particular is incredibly powerful, to the point where even Killua has been shown to be afraid of him. And yet, Silva sees Alika as a danger and takes significant precautions to ensure that she can't hurt the family. Killua is not particularly concerned about this, though. By this point in the series, he is done playing nice, especially where his sister is concerned. He faces down his dad twice, once to gain access to Alika's room, and again when he uses Alika's power to ensure that the two of them can escape the estate. And once he manages to get himself and Alika out, he spends the rest of the series deftly navigating the various obstacles his family puts in their place. Troublesome butlers in the case of his dad, and outright attempts at murder in the case of his brother Illumi, who is not on this list of best big brothers for many, many reasons. However, as much as Killua is dedicated to protecting his sister from their less than stellar family, the most important person he protects her from ends up being himself. Killua is willing to apologize. Without getting too in the weeds here, Alika's power basically comes from the fact that she shares her body with an entity called Nanika. For the most part, Nanika is seen as the scary element, the one who actually kills people in horrible ways, depending on the nature and number of their wishes. Most folks seem to think of her as Alika's monster side, the one who makes creepy requests that have to be fulfilled in order to get your wish granted and to avoid a terrible death. However, Killua sees it a bit differently. When cornered by his brother Illumi, Killua explains that Nanika is capable of healing as well, and she never has a cruel request afterward. And he's furious that Illumi would refer to Nanika as a thing. That said, Killua does have his own issues with Nanika, and they nearly destroy his relationship with his sister toward the end of the series. After Alika finally uses her power to heal Gon in episode 146, Killua asks her to bring out Nanika, and promptly orders Nanika to never come out again. While he doubts himself for hurting his sister, he still seems to think that this is the best way to give Alika a chance at a normal life. This choice backfires immediately. Sweet, even-tempered Alika is furious with her brother and demands that he apologize to Nanika. She sees herself and Nanika as a package deal and is extremely hurt that Killua treated Nanika like a monster who needs to be hidden, just like their family does. Killua, to his credit, quickly sees his mistake, apologizes, and promises to look after both of them going forward. And really, what better way to prove your exceptional big brother skills than to admit when you've made a mistake and be willing to do better in the future? Ranking reasons. Killua gets the number 3 spot on this list because of the way he is so driven to protect his younger sister, even from their own family. I mean, all of the brothers on this list obviously care very much about their younger siblings and are trying their best to protect them, but Killua really goes the extra mile given how much his family wants to kill his little sister. I kind of want to dock points for the fact that Killua's status as an older brother isn't even really mentioned until over 100 episodes into the series, but you could argue that there are plot reasons for that. And while the mistake with Nanika is pretty huge, Killua really nails the apology. Basically, we've got ourselves another flawed but awesome big brother fighting against some pretty big odds to protect his little sister, as all big brothers ought to be willing to do. Writing takeaways part 3. 1. Writing choices that show how an older brother treats his younger sibling can say a lot about both characters. Do they fight together against a common enemy? Do they fight each other instead? There are a lot of good opportunities for character development to be found in how siblings act out their relationship. 2. Family dynamics can have a huge impact on how your characters develop and interact with each other. Does the family treat each of the siblings the same, or are there big differences? What kind of tension does that cause, if any? 3. Sure, sibling arguments can be interesting, but does your big brother character have the guts to realize when he did something wrong and apologize? Why or why not? And what does this tell us about who he is as a person? At number 2, Tanjiro Kamada from Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer is a historical shonen anime about a boy named Tanjiro Kamada who comes home one day to a very nasty surprise. Most of his family has been killed by demons. The only survivor other than him is his little sister Nezuko, who has developed a slight problem. She's now a demon herself. Thus begins a heartwarming story about how to keep the entire world from killing your sister, while also learning the skills needed to take down the demon who ruined your life. Tanjiro is very much a compassionate good guy, and his actions really affect the people around him. This stems in large part from his relationship with Nezuko. Tanjiro has faith when no one else does. We're only 10 minutes into the first episode when it becomes clear to Tanjiro that his sister is now a demon. The part where she attacks him is a bit of a giveaway. Not long after, he's already defending her against a powerful demon slayer who thinks there's nothing for it but to put her down. Tanjiro, however, still believes that there's some humanity left in Nezuko, and he's willing to stand up to a dangerous opponent in order to prove it. And his actions end up convincing the demon slayer, Gyu Tomioka, to hook Tanjiro up with the info he needs to start down the path of becoming a demon slayer himself, which might be his only hope of making Nezuko human again. This ends up being a running theme throughout the series. Even though Tanjiro is right about Nezuko, she's never killed anyone as a demon, and he's certain she never will, most other people tend to see her as nothing more than a murderous demon. That doesn't shake Tanjiro's belief, though. No matter what he's required to do to keep Nezuko safe, Tanjiro is willing to do it. And it ends up being quite a lot, frankly. Tanjiro is prepared to endure. Sometimes it's the little things, like being willing to carry your sister in a box on your back for long distances because she can't be out in the sunlight due to that whole demon thing. Or headbutting a demon and bodily throwing it off a cliff when it endangers her. Point is, Tanjiro has to endure quite a lot, and he manages to get through it because he cares about Nezuko and wants to do whatever he can to help her become human again. Even if it means struggling to survive intense demon slayer training. Or just potentially get himself in trouble by yelling at a demon who dared suggest that Nezuko isn't cute. This endurance also comes into play with regard to some choices Tanjiro needs to make about his and Nezuko's future. When the demon doctor Tamayo offers to take Nezuko in and keep her safe, Tanjiro seriously considers the option. Tamayo's proven herself to be a good person, even if she is a demon, and like any excellent older brother, Tanjiro wants to keep Nezuko away from danger. But Nezuko doesn't want to be separated, and since the two of them are prepared to endure whatever comes their way, Tanjiro ends up respectfully refusing the offer. And this is pretty indicative of one of the most important aspects of this sibling bond. Tanjiro wants to stay together. It would be easy for Tanjiro to play the older brother card and lock Nezuko up somewhere and go off an adventure without her. However, instead of doing that, he seems to genuinely care about her desire to stay together and to fight together. During his first assignment as an official demon slayer, Tanjiro doesn't prevent Nezuko from helping because he realizes, in good older brother fashion, that his little sister is pretty darn powerful in her own right and doesn't necessarily need him to protect her. And there are times when he actively asks her to join the fight, like in episode 9, when two powerful demons are targeting them, and he needs Nezuko to protect Tamayo and Yushido, the siblings' demon allies. And of course, there's the end of season 1, when Tanjiro straight up tells the testy Demon Slayer Corps that he wants Nezuko to fight demons with him, essentially implying that she's on the same level as any demon slayer. Point is, Tanjiro recognizes his sister's strengths and pays attention to her desire for them to stay together, which is top-tier big brother behavior. Ranking reasons. Tanjiro and Nezuko are in kind of a similar situation to Killua and Aluka, so I had a bit of trouble trying to figure out who to put in which position. I ultimately gave Tanjiro the number 2 spot because he has to show that brotherly dedication over a longer period of time, and he absolutely never wavers. Nothing says high-quality Big Brother material like dedicating yourself for years to rigorous training and being willing to risk your life at the drop of a hat to protect your demon sister. Writing takeaways part 4. 1. Belief is a powerful thing that can provide great insight into a relationship and the people involved in it. Does your Big Brother character have faith in his siblings and their abilities? Why or why not? And how is that faith affected by the people and situations around them? 2. What is your Big Brother character prepared to endure in order to get what he wants? This might be a way to develop his wants and needs in relation to his siblings, or it may just tell us something about who he is as a person, or both. 3. Showing how your siblings work together, or don't work together, can be a great way to deepen the relationship and make them feel like really fleshed out characters. They don't have to slay demons, of course, but showing us what they do together can provide good insight into how their relationship affects each of them as individuals and what they're able to accomplish as a team. And finally, at number 1, we have Edward Elric from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. FMA is another show I've already covered, and I talked a little bit about the brothers and their relationship in that video. I'll leave a link in the cards somewhere so you can check it out if you'd like. For context in this video, FMA is a shonen anime about 2 brothers, Edward and Alphonse Elric, who experience horrifying consequences after trying to bring their mother back to life using alchemy. Ed loses an arm and a leg, literally, and Al loses his entire body, ending up as a soul alchemically tethered to an empty suit of armor. The boys' subsequent adventures are mainly focused on their attempts to reverse their mistake and get their bodies back, while also dealing with some serious military corruption and the potential end of the world. So, low stakes. FMA is very much a story about brotherhood, it's in the title, and Ed has a bit of a reputation for being a fairly iconic brother figure, and I would argue that that reputation is well earned. Ed aggressively stands his little brother. Ed shows an incredible amount of faith in Al, both as a fellow alchemist and as a sparring partner. After all, Ed is the guy who, when faced with an enemy threatening his little brother, is completely unfazed because he knows that Al can kick some serious ass. He's not even afraid to admit that he's never beaten Al himself. He also makes a point of staunchly believing in Al's humanity, which is something Al himself struggles with now that he's basically just an empty suit of armor. This is actually the crux of a big argument in episode 8, where Al worries that he's not really human anymore until Ed manages to talk him out of it. Like most siblings, Ed and Al do their fair share of bickering. But in the end, it's clear that Ed really respects and cares about Al and is prepared to do whatever it takes to help Al get his body back. Ed fights to fix his mistakes. Now you may be wondering, why is Ed number 1 on this list when he basically initiated the alchemical experiment that nearly killed him and Al? Isn't almost killing your younger brother kind of a disqualification? You'd think that would be the case, but here's my counter argument. Ed is 100% aware of his mistake, and he basically spends the entire series trying to rectify it. In fact, as soon as things went south during the transmutation, Ed took immediate action to protect Al. It's kind of hard to top a big brother who, at age 11 or so, took time out from rapidly bleeding to death to perform an incredibly powerful bit of alchemy that saved his little brother's life. You could also argue that Ed loses points for not being willing to use the Philosopher's Stone when he's given the chance. However, here's where I'd offer counter-argument number 2. Ed's refusal to restore Al's body this way shows that he's sticking not only to his own morals, given what the Philosopher's Stones are made of, but also that he's respecting Al's wish not to hurt anyone in their efforts to get their bodies back. Ed obviously harbors a lot of guilt about what happened during the failed human transmutation. Not that a guilty conscience is a requirement for a good big brother, but it does show that he's aware of how serious the situation is, and it makes him fiercely dedicated to doing whatever it takes to make it up to Al. Of course, it should be noted that Al doesn't blame him at all, but that discussion is probably best left for a video about the best younger siblings in anime. Anyway, doing whatever it takes to help Al ends up being quite a lot. Ed is prepared to sacrifice. Look, if your big brother isn't prepared to literally defy the laws of alchemy by kicking in a doorway to truth in order to reaffirm his promise to you, is he even really your big brother? Ed remains 110% steadfast in his dedication to help Al get his body back, and the sacrifice required for that is a pretty big deal. I go into more spoilery detail in my video on FMA, but basically the end of this show comes after a long and difficult series of events that really changes the way the boys think about alchemy and about themselves. Ed's choice at the end of it all upsets a huge part of his identity, and while he plays it down in the moment, it's clear that he's willing to go to great lengths to fulfill the promise he and Al made. While on the surface, Ed has always been in agreement with Al that their ultimate goal is to get both of their bodies back, his main focus clearly has always been to put Al first. And the steps he takes to do that easily put him in the top tier of anime big brothers. Ranking reasons. I don't think I'm doing anything terribly controversial by putting Ed at the top of this list. He combines a lot of the positive traits we've already discussed. Things like aggressively supporting his younger sibling, putting a real emphasis on family relationships, and being willing to jump into danger in order to protect his little brother. We'd all be lucky to have an older brother like Ed, even if he can be a bit of a reckless punk at times. Writing takeaways, part 5. 1. Does your older brother character understand and appreciate his younger sibling's strengths, or is he more concerned with his own needs and interests? Whether or not he shows interest in who his younger sibling is can tell your reader a lot about him. 2. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think it's relevant here too. Big brothers don't have to be perfect, but they should probably show some sort of believable reaction to their mistakes. Does your character dedicate himself to fixing things? Does he avoid the repercussions? Or is it more like something in between? We can learn a lot from how a character deals with embarrassment or unpleasantness. 3. What is your big brother character willing to sacrifice to get what he wants? This is important for any character, really, but there are some potentially interesting elements specifically for big brothers, particularly if their younger siblings' lives or happiness are on the line. Conclusion. So there you have it, my picks for the top 5 big brothers in anime, with a little bit of writing advice slipped in. I am absolutely certain that I missed some really good big brothers, so please let me know in the comments who your favorites are and why. And if you liked this sort of ranking list, let me know. I'm definitely going to keep doing deep dives into individual series, but I thought it might be fun to shake things up with different kinds of videos moving forward. I regret to say that my urban fantasy trilogy, the Compound series, does not have any big brothers, but it does have cranky empaths, magical conspiracies, and a little bit of queer romance, so you might want to check it out. Books 1 and 2 are available in ebook and paperback, and book 3 is on the way. More info on that is below as well. Thanks for watching, keep writing, and I'll see you in the next video.